Life can change in an instant. For many wheelchair users, the struggle to push forward is a daily challenge.
After years of development and countless prototypes, we created Rib Grips, the revolutionary wheelchair hand rim covers with built-in ribs for ultimate grip and comfort.
No more slick surfaces, no more heat burns, just pure, reliable grip. Rib Grips, empowering you to push forward with ease. Rib Grips, get a grip on your freedom. Discover the difference. Visit ribgrips.com and use promo code GRIP today. You just found the perfect product that helps with staying cool during hot summer runs. No more gross warm water. Stay cool with this product from Gear Handle. This hydration tube cover helps keep your water cool and easily accessible. Stay hydrated during those long summer runs or even delay from freezing in the winter. Plus, they're compatible with various brands of water bladders and come in various colors. Visit gearhandle.com and use promo code H2O today.
Coming up on the Payoff, the book is Chris Therien, Road to Redemption. And it's all about this former NHL bruiser's life in recovery, and before that, his life in hockey. Chris was not only one of the best players in Philadelphia Flyer history, but he was also one of the hardest partiers. One story he shared with me about actually drinking in between periods of an NHL hockey game and going out and playing better in the last period of the game after drinking in the parking lot is all you need to know about where addiction can take you. But his rise in recovery is, of course, the best part. Again, the book, Chris Therien, Road to Redemption, is out now. This podcast is up next. But first, that's not some of my best work. Kevin Souza.
This in the Philadelphia zone.
Oh,
it's Therien going at it with Odgers.
Holy jeez. Look out.
All right. Chris, what's up, man?
Not much, Pete. How you doing, buddy?
Dude, thank you so much for taking the time to do this.
No problem at all. Happy to help.
I've had you in the crosshairs for a while. I was I didn't know you were sober till about the Inquirer did a story on you about, I think it was 2 or 3 years ago. And it was
just about a year ago. A little over a year ago. Time flies. Huh?
Time does fly. And it was like, for somebody else who's sober, it's every time somebody like you goes out there and shares that message of hope, it's like a real shot in the arm.
Yeah. I appreciate that. And that's the message, I hope to get to people is like, shake that stigma off yourself and, pick yourself up off the ground. That's the way I look at life. And that's the way that I think everybody can do it too. I got sober, so I believe anybody can. And I'll share that with you on your show. So,
what's your podcast, by the way? My friends back in Philly are talking about it.
It's called Snow the Goalie. And it's a Flyers podcast. It's on Crossing Broad, which is the host. But it's a hockey. We do get some stuff out as well. Like on addiction and what my journey and doing stuff at Caron and
you were at NBC Sports in Philly for a long time. Working on Flyers broadcasts. First of all, you go to Caron, same place that I went. More than 11 years ago at this point, and you walk in there. Now here you are, you played 12 years in the NHL. You played almost 800 games with the Flyers, something like 750, and you walk in there. So you're an athlete, right? Like you're just fine-tuned. And they say to you when you walk in 50 years, we haven't had anybody come in with a higher blood alcohol level and live.
That's correct. Yeah, 0.63. And Brad still laughs about it. I laugh at it now, but there's nothing to laugh about. It's disgusting. It's pathetic. But that just shows you what my level was at the time. And really at that time in my life, my sister was dead 2 weeks before that. I was checking into Caron. It was a mess. But what was weird about that blood alcohol levels, they had to use 2 machines. Because I'll tell you the story if you want to hear it on the podcast. And then
let's go.
The nurse looked like she was going to pass out. When she saw my blood alcohol, she's like, she couldn't even talk. And I was talking and walking and standing like I would be right now, like sober as a judge. That's what I look like.
And they just, for you, it's business as usual. But even for them, when something addiction related would be business as usual, they were blown away. And they said it was because you were such a highly trained athlete. Otherwise, you probably would have been dead.
Yes, the guy absolutely said it. He goes, if you were not, and the thing was, is I was in incredible shape even then. Like that, drinking like that, but my physical condition, like you could have put me, if there was like a thing, I mean, I was one of those guys, I could work out till, or drink till 2 a.m. and be up at 5:30 going to the track. And
that's the hockey culture, right?
It is. And that's, like work hard, play hard.
Yeah. So you're in Caron in 2006. I want to go back. I mean, now you're working as a recovery advocate with Caron, and I am just in love with Caron because I feel like it saved my life, dude. The moment I walked in there, something changed for me, and I haven't been the same since in a very positive way. And
I feel the same way. I have the same affinity for Caron and what they've done, and the people. It's all about people. Business is about people, relationships, and at that time in my life, like where I was with my sister being gone and my only sibling. I needed something to find hope in. And, with my little kids at home, my 3 daughters at the time, and, I wasn't able to be the kind of father that they needed at that time. And the people at Caron taught me how to do that. I got a couple more bumps in the road after that, but really those messages that resonated with me at that time were the ones that I learned at Caron in my 30 days.
Well, and you talk about it. That's kind of, people say relapse is part of the process. Sometimes it is. I mean, it just absolutely is. It was part of my process. And there's stuff you pick up in recovery that kind of is supplanted in your subconscious that you kind of, it's still fishing around in there. And when you're willing, it's right there for you to take advantage of.
Yeah, it's funny too, Pete, because when I did get, I went to Caron for 30 days in July of 2006, and I think the biggest thing for me was when I was in there. I remember it was July 8th. 2006, the day I went in there, and my blood alcohols, they said 0.63. But, I went in, I came out happy, more or less happy to just not be on that pattern of drinking that I was on. So I had a relief when I got out of there. At that time, my wife was just sick of me. She probably still is, but in a different way, I guess. And, yeah, you know what I mean. And those are the relationships that you try to rebuild, and sometimes they work and sometimes they don't. I mean, there's always a difficult path with that. But when I got out, I just wanted to be sober, and it was a couple of years after that. I got about almost 2 years, and I always tell people, be careful when you come up on that 2-year mark, because it happened to me almost again the second time around. Is I don't know, something felt like a level of comfortability with me, and I decided to go out and try again. And I found out in about 2008, about the summer, that it just wasn't going to work out. Like, I knew it, but again, those accidents, the things started happening, a fall down, as my kids would say, you have the eyes, all the signs that you had before, it just doesn't go away. And that's the cucumber and the pickle adage, right? Like, you can't take the pickle out of the jar and turn it back into a cucumber again, because I'm already pickled. And that's kind of like what I've understood and where I'm at now in my sobriety in my life is that, where I got off that bus or that train, I will get right back on it again. And if I choose to drink again. And I know that now. And that's the trick to recovery is, I think, for anybody to understand what their deficiencies are as a person, what their strengths are as a person, and things that push back against them, as they did for me, and that was alcohol. And I've been comfortable now looking at myself in the mirror when I get up in the morning and saying, you know what, I am an alcoholic. I'm okay with it. I have alcohol use disorder, as I prefer to say. The word is changing. That word alcoholic is definitely kind of going by the wayside in a lot of ways. But there's a way to view yourself, and I view myself as somebody that has had challenges, someone that's had great successes as well in my life. But a lot of those successes came before and after my drinking. And I guess with hockey, and the beginning was when it was with the Flyers. It was during my career that my alcohol use disorder began. And it's where it went on the rise. But where I'm at now, I'm in a very, very different place, and an understanding of my own self, a comfort level with who I am, and an understanding, I guess, too, that, you're never going to please everybody. And so the most important person that you can please is yourself and God, and let the rest trickle down to whoever else intertwines with you in your life. And And that's how I live it right now. I try to give back to the community. I try to let people reverberate and understand what I went through. My drinking, it was painful. There was nothing pleasant about the end of it. It was awful. And I remember that. It's embedded in my head, and it's something that I just can't forget. But, I have that, like I know you do too, Pete. We have that sobriety built in. And for a lot of newcomers, they're the most important ones to try to get this program and be completely honest with themselves about who they are, just like I was. And I also say the biggest thing for me, and I think a lot of people now in the world of alcohol and drug use and mental health, is to shake the stigma. Yeah. It's okay to have it. It's okay to have something wrong with you. I had a problem drinking. I know a lot of people who have.
Yeah.
But it's not necessarily what, for me, what you do in that moment, it's how you respond to anything. Life is about falling down and how you pick yourself back up. And to me, that's everything. And that's been everything to me.
And it's like 20% of people that actually have problems with alcohol actually seek treatment. So that just gives you the idea of how many other people are out there just in the wind struggling that aren't even, that don't have the courage to ask for help. You touched on something about your career in hockey and your success. And I think that's something I want to hit on. You were so successful at hockey. That's a tough combination because athletes that are successful tend to think they're bulletproof. Young people, period, tend to think they're bulletproof. And folks that are succeeding on Wall Street or any kind of business when they're younger, they feel like they're bulletproof. And so you're drinking, but it's under control as you get into the NHL. But you get a silver in the 94 Olympics with Canada. Your career, you get to the Flyers, you're in Hershey for a cup of coffee for a little bit, and then you're right up with the big team. How is the drinking when all that's going on?
You know what? Like early in my career, I would say like if I could go back to even I was a partier in college like anybody, but like a weekend warrior, Friday. But again, there were times in college where I was very focused, on a weekend event. If the team was playing, I had to make sure that I was in tip-top shape for my game. Drinking wasn't a thought then. It was, part of it because you're in college like everybody else does. But it wasn't really till my journey, maybe 3 or 4 years into playing for the Flyers, that I probably noticed maybe it got a little bit more. My first year in the NHL, I never drank. Never drank. Yeah, 1994-95 was a lockout shortened season. I think I drank 2 nights the entire year, like that year. So it gives you an idea of where my thought was, and then the pressures of playing in the league. And again, I'm one of those guys. Like I had a wonderful childhood. I had great mom and dad, amazing sister, amazing family. I played hockey. And again, I didn't. There's, whether I'm not going to say whether my parents are non, major alcohol users. I think everyone that we know probably has multiple alcoholics in their family.
Yeah.
But that doesn't matter. My addiction, I think, came on as I approached like almost the turn of the millennium is when I started to notice it was getting bad. Not so much then. I was still a manageable, functional alcoholic, as you'll say. It was my last year after the NHL lockout in 2004 that was just a mess. It was an absolute. Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
Before we get to 2004, I got to believe, because I'm from Philadelphia. It was fun enough for me to watch you guys go to the Stanley Cup, right, in 1997.
Yeah.
I mean, that was a blast. And, the Flyers now are always kind of the heartbeat of the city of Philadelphia, or a portion of it at least. But back then they were national. They were more on a national stage all the time. What was that ride like? How much fun was that? And was there any debauchery?
You know what? I mean, those are, I ended up being a huge piece of a pie for a team for a decade that, I didn't know who I'd be when I came in. I became a top pair defenseman with Desjardins for 10 years. And I guess so I tell people in Philadelphia that I took my craft very seriously until it was really my last year. That was the one year that I felt that I cheated myself and the fans and the team. Up until then, I mean, I lived the life of Riley in the NHL. I was a huge part of this team. Yeah. My greatest accomplishment, I say, is, I played the most games in the history of the franchise as defenseman for the Flyers than anybody else. No,
753.
Yeah, just a couple ahead of Joe Watson at the time.
Yeah,
and,
okay.
So again, and I also say, I don't have a whole wall of awards from the league with my name on it, my name put on them. But, I played here, like I said, for 12 years for who I believe is also the greatest leader in the history of pro sports, and Bob Clark. So, I look at that, too, as a guy who is the ultimate judge of character. And, I felt like maybe he won't want to hear it now. But, what I say, I played 12 years for Bob Clark, and that speaks more volumes than any other award I could have ever had.
Bob Clark, NHL Hall of Famer, just a legend. In Philly. One guy who got sober on that Stanley Cup team was Bernie Parent, and he was the goalie for the Flyers in the early 70s. He's not alone, Pete. He's not alone on that team. Did he reach out to you, or was that a connection you made when you got sober? Is there any relationship there? Because I've heard him speak, and I'm like, wow, he's very he's like you, very charismatic, and I love how he carries the message.
Yeah, you know what, I do, and Bernie, I did a show with Bernie a little while ago over at Chickies and Pete's down at Rowan University. Here, it was the two of us and Paul Jolovitz, and we were just kind of yakking it up a little bit about hockey. But no, he texts me all the time about carrying the mantle of somebody that has enough courage to say, hey, listen, I'm a normal guy. I had a normal childhood and a normal upbringing. I go through some of the things that I think that led to maybe where it was, but Bernie supports me. Other guys that are very much inundated in the program, a guy like Reggie Leach, who's been very, very, very vocal on his platform as well, another Stanley Cup champion. So again, I think drinking, Pete, goes through the culture of the league, and you're not going to find a shortage of guys. Sadly, in many cases, in the NHL that that don't have issues. That's the way the culture worked, and unfortunately, you're going to see guys come up against it in many ways that have addictions, and most of the addictions in hockey, are alcohol. I think it's just kind of very much the culture of the sport we play. And so a guy like Bernie Parent or someone else I could go through a list of guys. I don't want to break anyone's anonymity in case they're not out there. I just remember, just Bernie and Reggie as two guys that do put themselves out there, so I didn't want to breach that. But very, very supportive of me. And I put a message out, I think a couple of weeks ago on one of them, Facebook or Twitter, just saying, hey, listen, if anybody here in this Delaware Valley is struggling, I have amazing places for you to go. Caron being top of that list. I have a small aftercare facility in the city, which was part of my give back as well. But there's so many great people. Caron, of course, is so dear to me that's where, I would love to push everybody because I think they have an amazing program. But really, that's what I do now. So Reggie Leach would text me or just openly saying, you know what, it's a beautiful day and thank you for what you're doing. And really all I'm doing is trying to carry a torch that those guys did as well. And let people know, Pete, you're not a loser. These things happen to people, and it doesn't make you anything. In fact, it'll only make you stronger. And that's the way I look at my life. 11 years and a couple months, almost 3 months past, my sober date, and every day is the same as the one before. I get up and I ask God to help me for today to get through it. And I have to believe that that's the path forward that He's carved for me and my journeys in life. They've not always been great. I would have kept doing hockey a few years ago, but again, getting relieved of my job with NBC and the Flyers ended up turning into something where I was able to do more to help people and to get my voice out. So, again, calling hockey games is fun. The sport in many ways is far different. It wasn't as fun. I wasn't as passionate about it. And I could say this in terms of my sobriety and carrying the message forward, my hockey career doesn't hold a candle to what my feelings and approach are in the recovery world.
Yeah, I can feel your passion, and that's something it's contagious. And as you being a recovery advocate for Caron, and you're what you're doing as far as giving people the financial support, you mentioned it for those aftercare programs. I was an aftercare guy. I went to Caron, and then I went to an aftercare for about 4 months, and for me, that changed my life because, and you've talked about this, when you get done with the NHL and you've got idle time, right? And you've lost that routine. And for anybody that loses a routine, whether it's, the mailman who retires or whether it's somebody who loses their job and drinking is kind of a thing, all of a sudden you're like, oh my God, what has happened?
Yeah.
And so rebuilding that routine through recovery, for me, was so key. How did you rediscover your routine in recovery? After hockey, you were kind of just without a net.
Yeah. You know what? That's a great question, Pete. And honestly, God, it's kind of the life trick question to pro sports. You know, I don't care. You know, and again, you see guys come out now, like NBA guys or baseball or whatever, they're making $30, $40 million. And what I can say is, yes, that money's nice to have. I don't have that, but new athletes do. It doesn't take away the issues that you're going to face. Isolation. You know, here's a problem with sports for me, and the leagues need to do a better job. And I'm actually having an initiative I'm working on right now for guys to immediately step out of their sport and get involved in their post careers, whether it's getting some of their jersey sales, taking a passion project they have and trying to move forward with it. I want to get that, be able to set up like almost like their own webpage where guys can then kind of manage it, have people work for them through whether it's social media or whatever. The problem is that when you're in that locker room, and this is exactly how it happens. Chris Therien plays with his 22 or 23 best friends every single day of his life for 12 years in the NHL. You're flying around on charter planes. My roommate was John LeClaire. And I can assure you there's not many, me and Johnny, and we used to call him Johnny Vermont. I mean, we were great friends. We still are, but we never got cheated on the road of a good party. Like we'd go out and we were living life. And I don't have regrets for those moments. But what I do see now as I've gotten more wisdom and away from the game is that the NHL and a lot of leagues don't really have a post plan for their players. And that's the biggest problem. When you're done, as I said, Chris Therien leaves that locker room. You're out the back door. You can't just come in and visit because the locker room's sacred, right, to the players only on that team. So when you're out there and you realize, like, well, geez, I'm going to call this guy, that guy. Well, he's in another city. He went home. And you're sitting there then looking for work or looking for things to do because you're not going to sit around. Some guys may think they're going to sit around the rest of their life watching TV. I can assure you that is not going to be what you're going to want to do. So there's a whole mindset and a whole change on your brain that you have to become acclimated for. And none of the leagues that are out there do enough because it does not matter how financially sound you are. It matters how well your mind is equipped to be able to handle that. And what are you going to do to make your life, a very, very positive journey post-athletics? Yes,
and you do a complete 180 by getting what sounds like the gift of desperation, right? And getting sober, where for me, that's where I find the blueprint. I was an athlete too. I played football in college, got an injury, but they kept me on scholarship. So I was like reined in, and then once I got out of college, I was in free fall. There weren't people checking on my classes. There weren't people, making sure that I wasn't getting in trouble on the weekends. It was no more study hall. School was out, man. And, I didn't have the resources or the star power that somebody like you did. But like you're saying, it's all the same. It's not even about – it's about time and it's about relationships. And, you mentioned in your final year, you were the drinking had become – so around the clock, you were drinking before games or in the mornings of, I guess, and you said you were on the ice with alcohol in your system.
Oh, well, there was games that happened late, and that's kind of like where I defied myself in ways where I said, like, I lost. Because it got to a point where I became such a character. And it was almost in a lot of ways I might have been like the last of the old school in terms of where the league was and I wear that as, I guess, a badge of honor. I mean, but there's things and that have happened to me in my life that I have to live with and again I look at it now. Some people are like, well, you didn't have a choice, and they're right. I didn't. I had a choice of how I got there on that journey. Yeah. However I got that part. But yeah, I mean, there was my most famous story of it myself, and I have it in the book, was I wrote a book which will be out at the end of the year as well.
Nice.
Very, very, very self-explaining of who I am, what went wrong in my life and what went right, and also a lot of great hockey stories. I know a lot of people want to hear about the Lindros era and all the secrets of that. So that's all in there too. But when I look at I look at what I did. There was a game we were playing against Calgary, and this is as true a story as you'll ever hear in the league. And it was the second period. We were tied 0-0 against Calgary, You know, and I for whatever, I had the worst withdrawal. And it was in the first period. And I'm thinking to myself, we're going to lose this game in the third because I'm playing about 7 minutes a period. And, 6-7 minutes, which is, you're like almost still an 18 or 20 minute a night defenseman at 34 years old. Complete alcoholic, hiding it as best I can. Most of the guys knew me, and I say like that old character, like, just leave him alone and let him play.
Yeah.
If the coach be like, he's drinking too much. I don't care. The guys be like, who gives a shit? He plays his ass off. And that was really what I was my whole career. I was that old school throwback. I think that became sensationalized with, they ran hand in hand. But that game in December of 2005, I had such bad withdrawal, and of course I had vodka in my car. And I went out and I took my skates off and I ran down the tunnel, which is where there's 2 security guards.
Yeah.
And I drank about 8 ounces of vodka after the second period.
So obviously this game's at home, right?
It's a home game.
Yeah.
Home game. And I'm like, I broke myself. Like, it was like I couldn't get past the fact that I had to do that.
Yeah.
And it kind of I thought of my journey in so many ways of things I'd done to get there that were so right. And to me, here I was. It's still hard to tell that story because all the things and all the people in the world that have worked so hard wanted so much, and here I was in the NHL where guys would do anything, and I have to have a drink. After the second period. By the way, the best part of the story, and this is where
did you guys win?
We won 1-0 in a shootout. And here's the best part. And this is the sad part too, Pete.
Yeah.
I walk into the rink the next day and I'm in like relief. I'm like, holy shit, I drank during a game. I'm like, this is unbelievable. Am I going to do it again? God, I hope that never happens again. And Ken Hitchcock's door's there. He's the coach. And he says, come in here and see me. And I'm like, oh shit, somebody must know. Like somebody knew or somebody smelled something. And I walk into his office. I got my, my shorts and t-shirt on. I get ready for practice. And his question to me was, how come you play so darn well against great teams like Calgary, who we don't get the most out against a bad team? And I'm thinking to myself, this is absolutely got to be a movie somewhere down the road. Because, and I think part of it in the story was like, wow, that's what alcohol did to me. It actually just made me more functional. And that's what my body was calling on with the withdrawals, the anxiety at the time. So,
and it's fool's gold too, right? Like you kind of are like, oh man, like I actually play. So even though deep down inside in your soul, you're like, that was pretty screwed up what I did. I can't believe I did that. We as alcoholics and addicts, we walk through doors that we can't come back through. And go ahead, Pete. Sorry. No, yeah. I mean, so you're just kind of like, it's like, damn, I can't believe I did that. But then Ken Hitchcock's like, hey, great job. So you can always kind of like rationalize it, like, oh, well, I played great. We'll get back to this conversation in a second, but right now, a word from our sponsors.
The all-new Chevy Colorado is made for more. Stacked with the latest in-vehicle technologies like a class-leading 11-inch diagonal center touchscreen and an extra-large wireless charging pad. Plus, it features wireless Apple CarPlay and Android Auto compatibility to make staying connected easy wherever your adventure takes you. Chevy Colorado, made for more. Learn more at Chevrolet.com/truck/Colorado. Claims based on latest competitive data.
I played amazing. I had an amazing third period. I could tell you that too. But that to me was a problem, right? Like that was where I was one of those guys that had the alcohol, the disease of alcoholism, and I knew it. And I had, 3 amazing little girls at the time, I had a young family, and I didn't want to live like that. Like I was like, this is insanity. It was almost like say I lived like that for 6 months. It probably that type of drinking lasted from the NHL lockout, I would say midway through it, like December of 2004, through about 14 months. Because I got a concussion in January of 2006. My career was over. I just went back to drinking. I mean, it was just the worst possible ending I could have had to what was a great career in Philadelphia. But to me, I let myself down. I had my last year, you know, I've had to apologize, you know, to myself and then to people, like, you know, to kind of forgive myself for those type of things. It's over now. I mean, we all make mistakes, right? And that's part of the stigma.
Yeah. Well,
so, you know, I've had to let go of those things.
And you're out there owning it too. And I have a couple buddies. One guy who, you know, they're both sober, but one guy who attempted suicide. It didn't, you know, obviously it didn't work out. He's still with us. He's sober about 30 years. And another guy who is an addict. He's in recovery. He's addicted to golf. He was a great basketball player, but he was drinking and doing drugs. So now he's addicted to golf. And both of them, their therapist said, you know, you need to go almost like have a conversation with your 20-year-old self. And just talk like how would you apologize to him? What would he say to you? Because I think a lot of times we do have, you know, we have regret, and it's like that's what's great about our program is we get to kind of work through all that stuff. We get to figure out like, hey, it is what it is. You're able now, Chris, to share that story and to make me as another alcoholic feel more connected to you and more powerful about recovery. And I think that is like. That's next level type shit, you know?
Yeah, and I also understand too. Like I always say, I'm the most minor, small end type of celebrity you can find. You know. But again, I think there's something. No, and I believe that, and I know that. But what I say is that there's a voice of people. You know, fortunately in the Delaware Valley in Philadelphia, where I played 12 years and a long time. You know, in many ways, a lot of people watch me grow up. You know, from almost the age of 20 to 50, which is. It doesn't happen a lot. So, you know, I mean, and also I think when I look at Philadelphia too, like, man, I guess the things I went through in my life, like, thank God it was here because, you know, I realized that you talk about like the city of brotherly love.
Yeah.
There's a lot of amazing people around here. And I'm gifted by that every single day. You know, you might have been pissed off at me because I made a mistake in a hockey game. But I'm trying to help you or another person or a family member that maybe has that. And that's why I expose myself to the city is, you know, if anybody needs anything, find me on social media. And I mean that. Track me down. We're setting up a Bundy line right now. Which
Bundy, that was your nickname.
That was my name. You know, some people still call me Chris. Now, I get called Chris in the new world, the circle I travel in, but in the hockey world, it's Bundy, and it's pretty much only Bundy. And there's times I look back and someone call me Chris, and I'm like, are they talking to me? That's just because how prominent the name became. And, yes, and I always tell people, without going into the story, it's after Al Bundy, not Ted. So that should put everybody at ease.
Hey, yeah, well, you were kind of a killer out there. So, you know, I want to talk a little bit about your family as we move forward here, get into the recovery, and then I'll let you get back to your life. But your daughters, I was just doing some research on this, and I read some heartbreaking stuff, but also on the other side of it, it's sort of glorious where your daughters were obviously smart. They're two of them were great athletes, right? They played for Loyola, Maryland basketball. All three of them. Okay. Yeah. So all three are sick athletes. But one of your daughters said, you know, I would go in my dad's closet and I would find empty vodka bottles and stuff. And I knew that this was a bad deal, you know, and I would take them and throw them away so he wouldn't be able to get them. And she said, I watched one glass turn into two, turn into three, turn into four. Right? Yeah. Like, was that a big part of your decision? Did seeing your daughters, because a lot of guys might be listening to this, or some guys, and they're still drinking. You know, a lot of the idea for this podcast is for people, if you want to drop in and listen and get an idea what recovery is about. You know, there's a guy out there who still thinks he's quote unquote functional, but his daughter knows he's a drunk. You know, how do you relate to that guy?
That's what I do. That's exactly what I do, because I try to preach recovery from, you know, a human side, but also a family guy, and especially a father more so than anything else. You know, it's great. I went out to dinner with that same girl who said those same things last Friday night. The two of us went out for Mexican dinner together.
Yeah,
we laughed. We talked like there's no talk anymore of alcohol. Like, she looks at me like I'm dad, and you know what? And I'm her rock star. And I'm all my daughter's rock stars now. So, you know what? I look at them like that, but they look at me as someone that, you know, one of the greatest rewards that I've gotten in my, 11 years, let's say 10 years, is watching my daughters play sports. I have a son too. He's 15. People ask him, he's a hockey player. Well, he's almost 6'5". He's a 15-year-old.
Wow.
I think I might try the football or the basketball route, which I'll talk to you more about after. But you know what? But all those things that people ask. I had a gentleman. This is the most rewarding kind of text I get. I had a guy a year ago say, "Chris, your story really hit me. I have 4 daughters. 3 of them are gone. They're off. They're out of the house. I have a baby left. She's 20. He goes, she knows I'm a drunk. And he goes, and all I want is a chance to have these girls back, especially my little one." Yeah. And I said to him, you can. You can. I said, but you can't do it in 1 week. You probably can't do it in 2 months. And I said, the only thing you're going to be able to do it is through your actions. Into action. I said, you know what? And when I went around that second time too, I came home and my wife would be, it took like even a year after I finally did it right the second time. She didn't want to talk to me. She didn't believe me. She didn't care. But my kids did. And they're the ones really there where I look at life and I said to myself, you have to do this for your kids because they're the ones that matter. And you know what? My greatest pride in my recovery is that I did not leave them with that Dennis Hopper character walking through the gym drunk.
Yeah.
I'm talking about
Hoosiers, yeah.
Where he embarrassed his son in front of everybody.
Shooter.
And I thought, and you know what? I look at my daughters; they've all become amazing basketball players. That they're amazing people, and they work hard. But most everybody says they're like hockey players on ice. But like I said, when I go up with Isabel last week, she was home. She dates an Indianapolis Colts player now. He's an offensive lineman at Penn State. But I couldn't be more proud of these kids. Yeah, and you know what? And my daughters now don't ever look at me anymore. This is what I'm telling that alcoholic that's struggling still and wondering about family. They will come back to you. My daughters think that I'm dad. That's all I am to them. I'm not alcoholic dad. I'm not the former drunk dad. Chris, dad that played for the Flyers, helps people in recovery right now, spreads a message of hope, broadcasts some stuff still, has an opinion that I put on a podcast about Flyers hockey. And I'm a guy that comes home and acts like a normal member of society and a normal dad. And I got that back because I stayed sober one day at a time. So I tell anybody that's out there with that, you can do it because I did it. And I believe at one time in my life I was the worst drunk in the world. And that's my message of hope I tell people. You may not get your wife back. I tell people that all the time. That may not. The damage that some people do endure as spouses is sometimes too much. But I will promise you your kids will come back to you always if you do the right thing. And for me, the right thing was to stay sober and to be a dad. And that's all they wanted to begin with anyway.
And it sounds like the first time, which obviously is, we've talked about it, it's part of the process. It is part of your recovery and your story today. But the second time around, I guess in 2008, after you relapsed, you really kind of put in the work. What was different for you the second time around? Were you going to meetings or were you being more accountable?
Yeah, these are great. It's so funny too because you get it. Like, yeah, absolutely. Pete, when I went in the first time, even though I went to Caron, right? Oh, I got out and I went right to a meeting. And now I'll talk about aftercare also. One of the reasons I got into aftercare, and this is nobody's fault. When I left Caron, this beautiful facility, and then nobody's fault of their own. If you don't have a really good aftercare facility or a really good AA base and a group of people waiting for you, you can fall into your habits really, really quick if you're not disciplined.
Yeah.
And I believe that's what happened to me. So that's why I got involved in aftercare. I believe the day you get out, you've got to be integrated with a plan that you've got to get yourself started with so that you can go live your life. And that's key. You can go to these beautiful 30-day recovery centers, and they're amazing. The people in them are amazing. I hate to see the waste of work go away after 30 days if you're not getting the aftercare. The same story for me, and I'm not saying that you need to go to aftercare, but you have to call your NA people, your AA people, whoever it is, and you have to have a network. And that was the difference. When I got out of my recovery, when I went back in my final time, I would get up at 7:50 in the morning to get to that meeting at 8 a.m. That was, 14 miles away.
Yeah.
It was cold. It was nasty. It was, January, February 2011. It didn't matter to me. And then when I got there, I started hanging around meetings. Rather, the first 2 years I went, I'd go to the back, never say anything, play video game on my phone, kind of listen, somewhat. Wasn't sure I was still one of them, even though I knew I was. AA, get a sponsor, be around the program. believe what you preach. But the sponsor, I think, was the biggest thing.
Yeah, I mean, for you, the second time around, you're doing the work, you're getting the results. What does your life look like today? I mean, what's a regular day? By the way, I just want to backtrack a little bit. The long-term stuff is so important. That saved my life. And again, what you're doing with that is just amazing. Because a lot of people fall off because maybe they don't have the resources to pay for that. So it's the Therien Foundation, right? And
and we're just getting that up right now. Actually, Pete, like we're working on just we're in the final stage. It's got to go through like the audit, through the taxes for IRS and all that. So we're in our final stages. But yes, that will be something that I want to start. Whether it's golf tournaments, soirees, evenings, our goal will be to raise money to help people that just do not have the finances. Whether it's going to a recovery center like Caron to help offset financial stuff for aftercare, sober living, anything and all to do with the recovery field, and that's what it's going to be dedicated to. This will be my life mission. I'm not changing anything in the future. I just got started in this a year ago. A lot's gone on with aftercare. We had a lot of trial and error through the first year, and really a blessing that I've had an opportunity with Brad and his great team at Caron to come aboard. I, like you, just a really special place that I felt a connection to and always will. So why not help spread that word about what my journey looked like. And through my eyes and my visit to Caron and the other places that I've been, I haven't been to any other places in the area, but the other stops that I've made and the people that I've seen in different places, it's intoxicating. I say that in a word, probably a bad word,
but it's a positive light. Yeah.
In a positive way, the amount of love and support that there is in this area.
What do you tell a guy that's coming back and is just trying to get one day? What do you tell him? And he says, "Hey, Chris, what do I do?"
Yeah, you know what? I love and somebody will call. I'll text me like, "Hey, Chris, I got like 5 days." I get it all the time. You know what? And my answer to them is, I had 5 days too. And anybody that had 10 years, my biggest problem is always like, I think I don't know if it's an alcohol use disorder thing with guys, but I wanted 10 years tomorrow, right? I just wanted it easy. I wanted to just be like everybody else, where you heard where you at the room and they're like, "Hey, I'm Bob and I got 15 years," or whatever it is. I wanted that right away. So I tell you, live life one day at a time. And I say this humbly. There was a time I couldn't get 5 minutes in 2006 when my sister died. I had to eulogize her. Your
sister died suddenly from cardiac arrest. She was 32. And this is during your spiral, and then you just, like most, if not all of us would, you go into free fall. And so you had to eulogize her. Go ahead, I cut you off, but I want to just give people a little background.
No, and it was about a month there where it was like, man, like my sister's gone, she's never coming back. My mom and dad are devastated. I'm an alcoholic. They don't know the extent of it. Few people do. I was broken. I was shattered all over, and and I think part of the self-pride I have, most pride I have in myself, is that, I got up off the ground. Life is all about that. As I said earlier, it's picking yourself up off the ground, because it doesn't just matter that it's an addiction disorder that may hamper you or what you're doing in your life. It could be a multitude of things. It may have nothing to do with addiction. But life always deals us blows, and it's a matter of how we respond to them and how we get back up and move forward. And that's why I think, to me, when I look at my life now at 50 years old, I battled so much adversity, getting bullied as a teenager, to wanting and knowing that the only thing that I could do would be to make the NHL at that time, to silence everybody. Yeah. It was a great win in my life, and then to play for what seemed like an eternity. Year after year after year in one of the great sports cities in America, and then to have had, I call my journey the rise, fall, and the rise, and that's what it was. It was a great fall that led up to my sister's passing, and it was almost like God said, "You know what? I'm going to give you the heaviest load you're ever going to have to handle in your life, and we're going to see what you're made of." And when I look at my journey now, my greatest accomplishment was not making the NHL or being a broadcaster. It was getting sober and giving my 4 children and myself a chance to be the best people we could be. And now after that is to spread that message and let other people know that are still sick and suffering that it's okay. And if you need to talk or you need to hear something, then listen to your podcast. Listen to what people are saying. You know, hear the words, because it's not dire. I look at this as an opportunity to take a positive, great step forward.
Oh,
you know,
dude,
yeah.
I mean,
and not to and part of it does mean you have to admit you got a problem.
Yeah.
That's sometimes hard. Like I lost the battle of alcohol. It was a hell of a fun ride for a while until it wasn't.
It totally
and
did.
I lost bad, man. I got knocked out cold.
Well, and you surrender to win. And that's really hard for people to conceptualize. When you now, as a recovery addict for Caron, you see the light in your girl's eyes and your son's eyes when they're just talking to you because of the guy you've become today. What washes over you in those moments when you're speaking in front of a crowd, talking to them about recovery? And I got to imagine it's got to be pretty crazy to make an incredible play on the ice in front of 20-some thousand at the Wells Fargo Center, right? But like it's a whole different high.
Yeah, I don't remember my puck skills making too many great plays, but a good defensive effort. You know, and that's kind of I think my humbleness playing into it. But you know what? Like I said, I think that I guess when I'm up there talking to people, it's just that that I did this, and I guess because I realized that I probably didn't at one time. I didn't necessarily believe that I ever really could do that. So I think that's where the challenge comes in many ways when I look at myself now. But, I just look at, I think the life that I've set up for myself. I have a lot of pride in who I am now, but I still have to guard every day. I'm one drink away from throwing this all away. And I think, as someone is serious about what I am and who I am and what I'm doing, that's my number one thing, to make sure that never happens, because that is truly, like Pete, when I say it, this, and I say this and with hope, this will never happen to me again. I will never let this happen to me again, where something controlled me and took over my life. And that's what alcohol did. And that can never, ever, ever happen again, because my relationship with people, my relationship with the world, and what surrounds it depends on what I do when I'm sober. Nothing good comes of alcohol. And I know that now. And I know that there's other people that are still trying to figure that out. And I promise you that they will eventually. They will if they want to hear that message and if they want to take a shot at it. You can get sober. We did it. And that's what I believe every single day I get up and talk to somebody. If I did it, so can you. It's
funny, Chris, man. We did do it. I on a much lower scale can relate to you. I did, but by this time you were probably you were with NBC Sports with the Flyers. I did PR for the Sixers for like 3 years and I was a cocaine addict and a drunk, and I can remember sneaking back off in the Lexus Club to get a quick drink while I was working or going back to my desk. This is during games, when I was supposed to be working for the Sixers, like in the same bowels of that arena, where you ran out that door. I know exactly the door you went out. And it's just, when you're telling me that stuff, God, I mean, those guys, the guards were such great guys, but you're telling me that stuff and I'm like, I'm right there. And I don't think that you had to have worked in that building to connect with you. You really, you carry the message. So I just want to say from the bottom of my heart, and for other people out there who are looking to break this stigma, man, like, thank you for what you're doing, because it's a huge deal.
Yeah. And thank you to you as well. I mean, the more message, people carrying the message, delivering that message, I think is just so important. Breaking the stigma. You're not a loser. Life's not over. Get yourself the help and get yourself back on the same track you were, to get yourself your life back. And that's a message. We all live the best of our abilities. You don't need to let a drug or alcohol take you to spots that make you the least desirable version of yourself, to you and to the people around you.
Chris, you're the man. What's the podcast one more time so people know? It's Snow the Goalie?
Yeah, Snow the Goalie. It's a Flyer podcast.
It's awesome. My buddies love it. So it's Snow the Goalie.
Yeah.
And you're also a recovery advocate for Caron. And we're working on the foundation, which is going to support guys and gals that need to go to extended care, which is awesome. And we're going to link all this stuff to the podcast.
Yeah, and also So, and this is like that very, very, when I jumped in, we have a great group of people behind us. Our Pennsylvania Recovery Center is also our aftercare. We have one in Phoenixville, and then I have the small piece of the one in Fishtown. And then really, that's just, again, for people that need, in the city. I always felt when I started this, it had to be part of the city of Philadelphia.
Yeah.
But Caron is absolutely the best. I'm so proud to be an ambassador for them, to carry that message. I'm doing a lot of great things with them, and just the start of what I hope is a very, very long and successful relationship together.
Hey, thank you so much for making the time today, man. I really appreciate it, Chris. Thanks so much for listening to The Payoff with Pete. Once again, I'm Pete Souza. And of course, we are part of the Rogue Media Network. All kinds of good podcasts you can find at roguemedianetwork.com. And of course, you can find this podcast and all those other ones wherever you get your podcasts, iTunes, Spotify, other spots like that.
This has been a Rogue Media podcast.
Are you a podcaster? Let's talk podcast hosting. Are you tired of your current podcast host? Need real support in a community that gets it? At Rogue Media Network, we offer top-tier podcast hosting services to help you thrive. From hosting and distribution to dedicated support, we've got you covered. Starting as low as $25 a month. Join our community of passionate podcasters today. Contact us at hello@roguemedianetwork.com.